My name was Ahmad. I was an Imam, a revered guide in my community. Staunch, disciplined, I stood before my congregation on Fridays, delivering sermons that echoed through the hearts of those who gathered. But behind my confident words lay a growing chasm, an emptiness my prayers could not fill. I was respected, yet in my soul, something was withering. As I bowed in prayer, seeking direction, unease crept in, a silent whisper of doubt. Is this all there is? I pondered, drowning in a sea of unvoiced questions. While others found solace in tradition, I felt a profound disconnect, as if I were merely performing rituals, clutching at shadows of faith without genuinely grasping the light. The dream of radiant figures wove through my sleep, illuminating a path I was too terrified to tread. Then, one fateful Friday, everything changed. During a moment of deep prayer, I slipped into a trance, transcending the walls of my reality. I found myself in a vast, otherworldly desert, where the sun burned with an intensity unlike anything I had known. It was there that I encountered him, Jesus. He called me by name, engulfing me in a light so pure that it shattered the chains of religious dogma I had clung to my entire life. He spoke of a truth hidden beneath layers of tradition, a revelation that transcended mere belief. In that instant, I saw the snares of societal and political constructs, systems designed to bind humanity in fear and division. The revelation shook my very core. I realized I was not serving God. I was serving a framework that suffocated the very essence of spiritual freedom. Returning from that encounter, I was tossed into a storm of confusion and hostility. Labeled a heretic, my own family turned against me, stoking an inferno of guilt and despair. Yet amidst the tumult, an undeniable flame ignited within me, a relentless pursuit of the truth I had seen, a calling to share that light with others who longed for liberation. So in this video, I'll share how a single experience transcended my understanding of faith and led me to embrace a path of radical transformation. A journey that binds questioning hearts and souls, searching for freedom from the confines of fear. Before we delve deeper, please share in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is. I want to connect our stories across the globe. And if you cherish the truth of Jesus as I came to know him, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. This isn't merely a tale. It's the unfolding of divine revelation that could transform your life. I always thought I lived a simple life, just like everyone else around me in this multicultural suburb of London. I was a cab driver, navigating the bustling streets, listening to the laughter, arguments, and stories of people from all walks of life. I had my strong faith, my family, and those little moments that made every day special. But everything changed one fateful Friday. It wasn't just any Friday. It was the day I entered the mosque to pray, as I had countless times before. Little did I know that the next few moments would change my understanding of everything, not just my religion, but the very world around me. As the prayers began, I felt something heavy in the air, a sense of anticipation that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I closed my eyes, focusing on the rhythmic chants, but just as I felt immersed in the familiar words, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over me. The world around me started to fade. It was as if I was being pulled into a deep, dark tunnel. That moment wasn't just a fainting spell. It was a confrontation with death itself. My heart raced, and in a heartbeat I was plunged into an experience unlike anything I could have imagined. Straight away, I found myself standing in a brilliant light, pure and all-encompassing, and there was Jesus looking directly at me. I couldn't comprehend how someone like me could stand before such divine presence. I felt both unworthy and profoundly loved. There were no words spoken. Instead, I was flooded with images and insights, a revelation of spiritual truths hidden from the world. I saw the deceptive scheming of leaders, the manipulation by the elite, their hidden agendas laid bare. I witnessed the ongoing spiritual war, suffering caused not just by physical battles, but by the divisions stoked among us all, driving communities apart. With each glimpse, I felt my own beliefs and traditions shake. Jesus showed me the truth behind the facade of our modern society. The technology we revered was, in many ways, a tool of control rather than liberation. Every text, every tweet, every scream for attention was orchestrated to keep us distracted from what truly mattered. It was a game played by those in power, one that made us think we were free while tightening their grip with invisible chains. I saw my community, once united in faith, slowly fracture, people turning away from each other, consumed by fear and anger, shaped by a narrative spun by those with a hidden agenda. I could see the larger picture, a tapestry of human lives, woven together with threads of struggle and hope, constantly challenged by darkness. As I stood in that radiant presence, I felt urged to awaken. A call to action rang through my spirit. I realized we were all caught in a spiritual war, one that required us to see through the deceptions around us, to rekindle our faith and truth, and stand together in love rather than fear. As the weight of these revelations bore down on me, I felt the urgency swell. Something had to change. People were waking up, glimpsing beyond the veil, and yet many remained entrapped in ignorance, oblivious to the divine warnings. Suddenly I was jerked back. The echoes of the call lingered as consciousness rushed back into my body. I was back in the mosque, the prayer still echoing in my ears, but I could no longer ignore the seismic shift that had occurred within me. I emerged from that reverie with a weighty sense of responsibility. My faith had not been shattered, it had transformed. I felt an urgency that compelled me to share these revelations with my community, to rally those who were questioning, to empower those who felt lost and disillusioned. I needed to ignite that spark of awakening before it was too late. And as I stood up, a wave of determination washed over me, preparing to face the world armed with the truth I had been shown. I've spent the last decade as an Imam in my community, leading prayers, teaching, and helping others find their way in faith. People looked to me for guidance, and on the surface I was doing everything right. But beneath that polished exterior, I felt an unsettling emptiness. Each prayer echoed with a hollowness I couldn't ignore. What once felt like powerful connections to God turned into mere ritual, and as I stood before my congregation, I was consumed by a fear I couldn't articulate. Was I serving a faith that was devoid of true connection? It was during one of those Friday prayers that everything changed. That day, I remember feeling particularly restless as my congregation gathered. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with something else, a tension I couldn't quite grasp. I delivered my sermon, words flowing easily, yet lacking fervor. Midway through, a deep darkness crept into my consciousness, consuming the brightness of the day. I felt as if the walls of the mosque were closing in, a suffocating reminder of my internal conflict. Suddenly, I collapsed, my body hitting the floor, and just like that, everything faded to black. In this blackness, I found myself in a realm of indescribable light, radiant and warm. And there he was, Jesus, standing before me with an expression of pure love and understanding. I was engulfed by an overwhelming sense of peace, yet I knew in my heart this encounter was no mere coincidence. As he began to speak, revelations poured into my soul. I saw visions of a spiritual war hidden beneath the surface of our daily lives. I saw the deception perpetuated by the elite, how they manipulated leaders and entire nations to maintain control over us, sowing division and strife among different faiths and communities. The truths I witnessed left me trembling. I began to understand how the very technology we embrace, often seen as advancement, was actually a device of surveillance and manipulation. Each tap on our screens, each notification that captures our attention, was a thread woven into a fabric of control designed by the elite. I felt that awakening, not just within myself, but as a call to everyone. We must see past this deception and understand the underlying spiritual turbulence that threatens to engulf humanity. Jesus urged me to share these truths, to awaken those in my community who remain oblivious to the battles being fought for our very souls. Visions of wars, unrest, and suffering flooded my mind, underscoring our collective struggle. I watched as communities fractured, not from external pressures alone, but due to internal conflicts fueled by misinformation and manipulation. I saw families torn apart by misunderstandings of faith, as fear and anger replaced love and understanding. The urgency of the moment pressed upon me. Millions were asleep, trapped by their own ignorance, while a spiritual awakening loomed just on the horizon. It was a call to arms, not with weapons, but with the truth of Jesus and the core principles that unite us as human beings. Then, just as abruptly as it began, the light began to dim, and I felt my essence being pulled back to my body. I gasped for breath and opened my eyes amidst the concerned faces of my congregation. I was back in the mosque, and yet I was changed forever. The revelations I had witnessed were etched into my heart, igniting a fire within me to lead others towards awakening. My role had transformed. I was no longer just an imam performing rituals. I had been tasked with a mission to awaken those around me to the reality of the spiritual war in which we all play a part. And as I stood there, a sense of urgency gripped my soul, urging me to act before darkness swallowed the light again. As I stand before my congregation each Friday, I lead our community in prayer, feeling both revered and isolated. On the surface, I embody the role of an imam, disciplined, charismatic, a guide for those around me. Yet as the prayers begin, a growing unease settles in my heart. Each line I recite feels increasingly hollow, echoing a truth I'm afraid to confront. Deep down, I grapple with unspoken doubts, the nagging feeling that my beliefs might lack the completeness I once took for granted. It gnaws at my soul, making me question everything, even as my community looks to me for spiritual guidance. In recent weeks, my nights have been plagued by surreal dreams, luminous visions that lead me to places I cannot understand. These dreams are filled with brilliant light, an almost blinding radiance that draws me in, yet leaves me shaken. I wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, to find myself alone and filled with a deep yearning for meaning. I can't ignore the message hidden within these dreams. It feels like a spiritual war raging inside of me, fought between the faith I've always known and a deeper truth begging to be uncovered. But what is this truth, and why does it frighten me so? One Friday, as I lead my congregation in prayer, that feeling intensifies. It's as though the walls of the mosque are closing in. The familiarity of the space morphs into something stifling and alien. Suddenly, I feel lightheaded, my vision blurring, a dizzying spiral pulling me into a realm of darkness. In that abyss, I encountered Jesus. He stands before me, exuding a warmth that fills the very marrow of my bones. The image is surreal, almost too magnificent to absorb. It's not just an encounter, it's a revelation that flips my understanding of the world on its head. In that sacred moment, I'm flooded with knowledge. I witness the hidden agenda of those in power, the elite manipulating global events, not merely for control, but to perpetuate the spiritual war that rages unseen. I see leaders divided by deception, their intentions masked by shiny facades. The truth is laid bare before me, illuminating how easily we've been misled, how technology, which we believe brings us closer, is yet another chain binding us to complacency and division. I realize that our age is one of distraction, igniting conflicts between faiths and communities that are already fragile. I'm overcome by the urgency of this awakening, an overwhelming call to action. Jesus urges me to share this revelation, to help my community see past the deceptions that ensnare our hearts and minds. The weight of this purpose presses heavy on my chest. I know that the awakening must happen now. Too many sleepwalk through life, oblivious to the spiritual war that threatens to consume us all. As I'm pulled back to my body, gasping for breath in the familiar echo of prayers, a new sense of clarity washes over me. This is not just a momentary vision. It's a call to arms against the hidden agenda that seeks to divide us. I step back into the mosque, transformed, knowing I can no longer be merely a vessel of rituals but a beacon of truth amidst the darkness, a leader whose journey has just begun. As I bowed my head during the Friday prayer, a deep sense of unease washed over me. The familiar words of devotion felt distant, echoing around me but failing to penetrate the growing darkness within. I've been an imam for years, leading my community, yet here I was, grappling with an internal struggle that threatened my very core. There had always been whispers of doubts, but now they roared like a tempest, insisting I look closer into the very faith I dedicated my life to. It was in that moment of disquiet that the world around me began to blur, and I felt myself slipping away. The next thing I knew, I was standing in a vast desert under an impossibly bright sky, the sun blazing above me like a massive jewel. The heat was palpable, the sand beneath my feet warm but grounding. Yet what struck me most was the profound silence that enveloped me. This wasn't an ordinary desert. It was a place that felt both foreign and eerily familiar, as if I had stepped into the void between existence and oblivion. In my heart, I knew something miraculous awaited, yet I also felt a weight of dread. Was this a punishment for my doubts, or a journey toward revelation? Then, out of that blinding light, a figure emerged. Jesus. The moment I recognized him, an overwhelming sense of peace cascaded through me, washing away my fears as if they were mere shadows. He approached me with an aura of compassion, his eyes radiating love and understanding. Ahmad. He spoke directly to my soul. You felt the burden of misunderstanding and deception in your world. It's time for you to awaken. His presence was magnetic, drawing me into a deeper comprehension of the spiritual war being waged right here on earth, a battle for our hearts and minds, often hidden beneath the surface of our daily lives. As he shared his message, I was shown glimpses of hidden agendas woven into the fabric of our society, the manipulation of the elite who thrive on division, conflict, and distraction. I saw how this spiritual war isn't just fought with weapons, but with ideas and beliefs that keep us at odds with one another. I witnessed leaders bowing to greed, their decisions creating barriers between us, fostering resentment that has been spiraling into chaos. It was all laid bare before me. How those in power erect walls not just between nations, but also between faiths, fueling the cycles of war and division that seem endless. The truth of it all gripped me with urgency. Jesus revealed that our greatest weapon wasn't anger or hatred, but love and understanding, rejecting the deceptions meant to blind us. I felt his words pulse through me, urging me to share this message with my community, to help them see the reality behind their fears and doubts. There's an awakening necessary, a call to illuminate the darkness that shrouds so many. But would they believe me? Would they embrace this truth? Or would they fall deeper into the trap set by those who thrive on our divisions? The clarity of that moment began to shimmer, and I knew I was being pulled back. With each passing second, the desert faded, the blinding light dimmed, yet the weight of its revelation remained heavy in my heart. I opened my eyes in the mosque, surrounded by the familiar faces of my congregation, confusion and concern etched on their brows. I was back, but irrevocably changed. The call to action echoed in my soul, a quest to awaken those around me to the truths I had witnessed. As I stood to address my community, a fire ignited within, a mission to unite, to reveal, and to guide them towards an understanding of the spiritual war that demands our attention now more than ever. In the days following my revelation, I found myself trapped in a whirlwind of confusion and turmoil. The encounter with Jesus left me awakened to a truth that seemed impossible to articulate, let alone share. I returned to my life as an imam, but the welcome was anything but warm. My family, once filled with pride for my position, now looked at me with a mixture of fear and anger. I became a pariah, labeled a heretic for speaking of the spiritual war one had witnessed, of the deceptions echoing through our lives. It felt as though the very ground beneath me had shifted, and I was left standing on unstable earth. The backlash was immediate and violent. Some members of my congregation, consumed by what they deemed blasphemy, confronted me after prayer. Their words slashed across my spirit like a knife, filled with accusations and threats. "You've lost your way," they cried. Their voices, a cacophony of fear that struck against the faith I had devoted my life to. It wasn't just their words that hurt. It was the sense of betrayal from those I once considered brothers and sisters in faith. In the haze of their outrage, I felt myself slipping deeper into isolation, grappling with the guilt of an awakening that had come at such a high price. I could no longer find solace in the rituals that had once anchored me. The mosque felt foreign, like a house filled with echoes of a past life I could no longer embrace. I wandered its halls like a ghost, contending with the haunting grip of loneliness and despair. It was overwhelming to think of the truth I had been shown, the hidden agendas of the elite, the manipulation that sowed chaos in our societies. I was walking a path riddled with thorns, unable to escape the feeling of being tied to my old life while yearning for a new understanding. How could I reconcile these truths with the community that now turned its back on me? Then there were the days when the anger turned physical. I remember standing outside the mosque after a prayer, when a familiar face sneered at me, fists clenched. "You've brought shame upon us," he shouted before lunging. I felt the blow land hard against my stomach, doubling me over in pain. As I gasped for breath, a wave of sadness washed over me. This was a man I had once considered a friend, someone I had shared prayers and laughter with. Yet in that moment, he was just another soldier, defending a faith he believed I had betrayed, The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional toll, a bitter reminder of the cost of my spiritual awakening. In the solitude of my thoughts, I questioned everything: my purpose, my faith, and whether this path was truly what Jesus intended for me. Guilt weighed heavily upon my heart. Could I be doing more harm than good? What if my revelations, meant to guide others, only further divided them? I found myself in desperate prayer, pleading for clarity, for understanding. The silence that met me was deafening, leaving me more bewildered than before. Yet deep down, I knew I had to press forward. The world needed to wake up to the deception suffocating us. I felt that urgency stir within me again, reminding me that truth must triumph over fear and division, regardless of the personal cost. Each night, I lay awake, pondering the implications of what I had seen and heard. I envisioned communities coming together, breaking the chains of manipulation through love and understanding. But how could I spread that message when I felt so alienated from those who needed it most? I longed to reach out, to find a way to bridge the chasm that had formed between my newfound truths and the beliefs of those I cared about. The visions haunted me. Battlefields not of swords and shields, but of hearts and minds, fighting against the hidden agendas that sought to keep us divided. The stakes felt higher than ever, and I was caught in the middle, compelled to share what I had witnessed, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. In the quiet hours of the night, I found myself drawn to the light of my computer screen, hesitant but determined to explore a world that had begun whispering to my heart. After my confrontation with the truths Jesus revealed to me, I felt an insatiable craving for understanding. The Bible became my secret refuge, a forbidden text I had only skimmed over in sermons. With every verse I read, I felt an awakening within me, a stirring that ignited a fire in my spirit, even as shadows of fear lingered in the corners of my mind. Would my journey lead to a profound transformation, or to isolation from the family and community that shaped my identity? For hours, I watched testimonies of people whose lives had been radically altered by their encounters with Jesus. Each story resonated deeply, igniting hope and chaos within me simultaneously. I was captivated by their sincerity, their joyous proclamations of freedom from chains I hadn't fully acknowledged were binding me. Yet, with every video I absorbed, I felt the weight of the hidden agenda lurking around me. Those who sought the truth were often cast out, branded as traitors or worse. I feared the same fate awaited me. Could any of these newfound truths truly coexist with the faith I had always known? Navigating this delicate balance became an act of spiritual warfare. I began connecting with a clandestine group of individuals who, like me, had felt the stirring of Jesus in their hearts. We convened under the cover of darkness, our conversations heavy with revelation and fear. We shared our experiences, each story a thread woven into a tapestry of awakening, each one exposing the elite's manipulation of our beliefs. It was in these shadows that I found solace, yet with every meeting came the gnawing anxiety of discovery. What if our gatherings were uncovered? What if my family learned of my ties to these heretics? The new connections stirred something powerful within me. These compatriots opened my eyes to the deception that pervaded our lives, how the leaders we trusted were entangled in a web of lies, thriving on our divisions. I absorbed their knowledge, watching how they navigated their own transformations while carrying burdens of guilt and fear like my own. The revelation that we were engaged in a spiritual war invigorated me. It was a battle not merely for souls, but for the truth that lay hidden beneath layers of culture and fear. I could almost feel the pulse of my awakening, urging me to break free from the chains that had long defined my identity. Yet with every step toward this new understanding, the fear of rejection loomed larger. As I wrestled with these fears, the loneliness pressed down like a heavy cloak. I would see my family sharing meals, laughing, while I sat apart, struggling with the divide growing between us. Their faith was simple and sincere, rooted in traditions I revered. And yet I felt a chasm widening, a gap that seemed insurmountable with the revelations weighty upon my heart. I questioned whether I could share my newfound understanding with them, or if doing so would seal my fate as an outcast. The urgency of the spiritual truths I'd come to see pressed against my chest, creating an inner conflict I didn't know how to resolve. It was during one of those restless nights, swallowed by self-doubt and fear, that I found myself praying fervently, yearning for guidance. I felt a presence, an echo of the divine reassurance I experienced in the desert, a reminder that the path of truth is often paved with trials. This journey seemed insurmountable, but I understood that I had to confront it head-on. The awakening was not just for me, it was for those around me. The revelation settled into my bones. Jesus intended for me to be a conduit of change, of awakening for my community. As the dawn broke outside my window, I made a solemn vow to step into the light, even if it meant facing the darkness that awaited me on the other side. As I stood in my living room, the weight of my recent revelations pressed upon me like an unbearable burden. The encounter with Jesus had shaken the very foundations of my life, igniting a fire within my soul that refused to be extinguished. What had begun as an unsettling experience during prayer had transformed into a divine calling, one that urged me to share the truth I had uncovered. Yet with this realization came the daunting awareness of the cost. I understood that my beliefs would challenge the very societal norms that had been my reality for as long as I could remember. The thought of alienation from my family and community loomed large, casting a shadow over my newfound purpose. In those quiet moments, I wrestled with fear. The stories of others who faced persecution for their convictions echoed in my mind. I couldn't help but think of the consequences. The elite might see me as a threat, a voice calling for awakening against their hidden agendas. But could I remain silent? The truth I had seen, the manipulation woven into the fabric of society, demanded a response. It was more than personal conviction. It felt like a moral obligation to stand up against the deception that shrouded us all. This was a spiritual war raging not just within me, but across the hearts of countless others yearning for awakening. As I gathered the strength to confront my fears, I envisioned the moment I would publicly express my beliefs. Scenarios played out in my mind, questions swirling relentlessly. How would my congregation react? Would they reject me outright? Or would I find allies among those who, like me, had been touched by the call of Jesus? The stakes felt alarmingly high. I began preparing myself mentally and spiritually for this confrontation, praying for guidance and strength to navigate the storm that lay ahead. There was an urgency pressing me forward. It was now or never. Each night as I lay awake pondering the implications, an overwhelming sense of purpose began to take root within me. The visions of suffering and division in our world haunted my thoughts, reminding me of the lives affected by the spiritual war being waged around us. I saw families torn apart, communities fracturing, and souls lost in a sea of confusion and despair. The revelation that awakened me felt like a beacon, urging me to catalyze change. If I remained silent, how many would continue suffering under the weight of the deception thrust upon us by those in power? Finally, the day came when I knew I could no longer keep this truth hidden like a secret. Standing before my congregation felt like standing on the precipice of a great abyss. I could feel the tension crackling in the air as I prepared to speak, and my heart pounded in my chest. This was not just a statement I was about to make. It was a declaration of war against the forces that sought to silence us. I breathed deeply, calling upon every ounce of courage, knowing that I was diving into a profound spiritual awakening, not just for myself, but for everyone willing to listen. With fervor in my heart and the words of Jesus echoing in my mind, I opened my mouth to speak the truth that had transformed me, ready to face whatever consequences lay on the horizon. The moment I made the decision to leave my former life behind, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking into an abyss of uncertainty. I had been known as Ahmad, a respected Imam, yet I understood that my journey of awakening required me to fasten my seatbelt for a bumpy ride. The revelations I'd experienced became a relentless calling, echoing in my mind like a melody I couldn't ignore. I knew that adopting a new name would symbolize my rebirth and the shedding of the identity I had held for so long. It was a clear act of courage, a step toward a path that I believed would lead me to those searching for truth, just as I had once been. The world outside seemed unfamiliar yet imbued with possibilities. As I distanced myself from my community, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss, mingled with a newfound freedom. My former life had been filled with routines and familiar faces, yet now I was walking a road that was strewn with uncertainty and challenge. It was in that space of transition that the fear of being shunned crept in. Would I be seen as a traitor? Would my family understand this quest for spiritual truth? I could feel the weight of judgment pressing upon my shoulders, but inside me, a fire burned brighter than the sting of those fears. I was determined not to let the hidden agendas of the elite, those who thrived on division and strife, silence me. As I navigated this new existence, I sought out others who had experienced similar awakenings. I searched for souls who, like me, felt the pull of Jesus calling them away from the mainstream narratives that often mask the truth. I found a small group of seekers, diverse in background but united in purpose. Each gathering felt like an electric charge coursing through me, igniting conversations that were rich with insights and shared revelations. The more we discussed our experiences, the more I understood the urgency of our calling. We were in the midst of a spiritual war, battling not just against external forces, but also against the deep-seated fear that kept many in our communities from seeking the truth. Through those discussions, the interconnectedness of our struggles became increasingly clear. The stories of suffering and disillusionment resonated with the broader societal issues we faced. A world rife with manipulation, fueled by the elite's hidden agendas. Leaders who proclaimed peace often sowed discord behind closed doors, using technology to propagate their deception rather than to unite. It became apparent that our journey was not singular but part of a larger tapestry of awakening that could change the future of humanity. I felt compelled to amplify this truth, to share it with those still shrouded in ignorance or fear. Each day was a step toward creating a new identity, one rooted in a commitment to share what I had discovered. I realized that my experience was more than just personal enlightenment. It was a divine calling to reach out to the lost, to guide those searching for meaning in their lives. With every encounter, every conversation with individuals who felt lost, I found purpose. My heart urged me to reach deeper into the cracks of fear and misunderstanding, to shed light where darkness had taken hold. And just as I began to feel as though I could break through the barriers of societal repression, a new wave of fear hit me. What if the very act of speaking up cost me everything, including my life? But in that uncertainty lay the truth of my awakening, reminding me that the risk of silence was far greater than the perils of speaking out. Years have passed since I embarked on this transformative journey, and now I find myself in a new country, living a life that feels both foreign and liberating. I've devoted myself to ministry, and with every sermon I deliver, I can feel the weight of my past lifting, bringing clarity to my purpose. The echoes of my old life linger, those moments when I grappled with my faith, those haunting dreams, the call of Jesus that shook me to my core. Now, sharing my testimony with others who feel lost becomes a crucial part of my existence. It's a story of awakening, one that resonates deeply with those who long for truth in a world rife with deception. Yet, as I reflect on my new life, a bittersweet reality gnaws at me. Despite earning respect for my bravery, I am still haunted by the fracture within my family. They remain in the old country, unable to comprehend the shifts in my faith or the weight of the revelations I've received. I dream of reconciliation, of sharing the truths that awakened me, hoping they might one day understand my journey. My heart aches, knowing that the spiritual war I've fought is not just mine. It's a battle many face in silence, struggling with their beliefs and the expectations of their communities. The thought of being rejected by those I love is a constant reminder of the risks I took. Every day, my ministry brings stories of pain and hope, illuminating the reality that humanity is connected through shared struggles. I counsel others, guiding them through their own spiritual awakenings. And with each person I touch, I sense the significance of our collective journey. These encounters remind me of my own. The lonely nights spent wrestling with fear, the relentless pull of the truth I had finally embraced. I see in others the flicker of light I once carried, a light yearning to break through the darkness of deception that surrounds us. The world is full of elites who thrive on division, wielding power like a weapon against the very people they claim to serve. The deeper I delve into these conversations, the more I understand the realities of our modern existence. Our societies often feel manipulated by forces outside our control. Leaders speak of unity at the top, while their actions perpetuate division below. It's a deception cloaked in false righteousness, a narrative that I feel compelled to unravel. As I share my insights, I urge those around me to awaken, to question what they've been taught, and to seek the truth that lies beneath the surface. This mission no longer feels like a personal journey. It has become a collective call to arms, a rallying cry for those ready to confront the hidden agendas that shape our lives. However, my desire to reconnect with my family remains a tender wound. I realize that for all the courage I've summoned to share my beliefs, the fear of rejection still lingers in the shadows. I long for the opportunity to explain that my journey doesn't diminish my love for them or the values we once shared. It's essential to me that they understand this transformation as part of a broader truth that can unite rather than divide. The urgency of my mission pushes me forward, yet deep down I hold on to the hope that the love we once shared can bridge the chasm created by my awakening. I must find a way to convey that the fight for truth and awakening is not just about personal salvation, but about healing the bonds that connect us all. The moment I realized the full implications of my awakening was a turning point that will forever be etched in my memory. It felt as if my entire life had been a carefully constructed facade, one that served a hidden agenda I hadn't fully recognized until then. My name is Ahmad, and for years I led my life as a dedicated Imam. But after my encounter with Jesus, everything shifted. What was once a life of routine and structure transformed into a tumultuous journey of discovery, fraught with pain and fear. The truths I began to uncover felt like a spiritual war raging within me, challenging every belief I had held dear. In the aftermath of that transformative experience, I found myself grappling with the revelation that spiritual freedom comes at a cost. It is not simply a matter of saying a few prayers or adhering to dogma. It requires wrestling with uncomfortable truths, especially when those truths threaten to unravel the very fabric of the life I had led. During the oppressive nights filled with doubt, I'd often replay that moment with Jesus in my mind, recalling his words urging me to seek the truth, no matter how destabilizing it might be. The more I understood, the more I felt the tug of divine connection drawing me closer, not just to God, but to an authentic understanding of faith that transcended the confines I had previously accepted. As I immersed myself in my newfound purpose, I became acutely aware of the deception permeating the society around me, how certain leaders and elites manipulated information to maintain control over the masses. I began to connect dots I'd never seen before. The wars raging across the globe, fueled by greed and the lust for power, were more than mere geopolitical struggles. They were battles in a larger spiritual war, one that pitted truth against deception. Each story of suffering, each news report filled with division, rang like a clarion call for awakening. A reminder that we must rise above the lies that propagate fear and ignorance. It was during one of my ministry sessions that I felt the full weight of this responsibility. As I shared my testimony with others, I could see the sparks of awakening in their eyes, the same hunger for truth that had once ignited within me. I spoke passionately of the need for spiritual resilience in the face of adversity, emphasizing that embracing the truth often means facing the painful realities of our world. But I also felt a fear creeping in again. What if my words led someone into danger? What if the very act of sharing my revelation alienated those I loved? Yet as I looked into the faces of those gathered, I knew the risk was necessary. Even as I preached the importance of seeking truth, the ghosts of my past haunted me. My estranged family remained entwined in traditions and beliefs that seemed to isolate them from the life I now led. I longed to reach out, to reconnect, but I feared that my awakening might only serve as a barrier. The internal conflict swirled within me. Could they ever understand the journey I had taken, the transformation I had undergone? Deep down, I realized that true connection with God is often found in the uncomfortable truth of our individual journeys. Even if it means navigating those turbulent waters alone, with each passing day I felt the urgency increase, as if the world itself was a canvas upon which a greater revelation was waiting to unfold. I was more than just an imam. I was a conduit for change in a world desperate for awakening. The pain of my past, the fears of the present, and the hope for the future all coalesced into a singular purpose: to illuminate the truth wherever I went. And with that purpose came an exhilarating sense of freedom, propelling me forward into the unknown, ready to share the divine revelations that had changed my life forever. As I stand at the precipice of this journey, I feel compelled to ask you, have you ever experienced a moment that turned your world upside down, a spark of realization that lit a fire in your soul? In our lives, there exists a profound tapestry of spiritual encounters, threads woven together by divine purpose. Now more than ever, we are called to awaken to these truths and recognize that we are part of a grand narrative, one that transcends our individual experiences, binding us in an urgent quest for meaning and understanding. In the dark corners of our existence, when life feels chaotic and disconnected, it's vital to remember that our struggles are not ours alone. The truth I encountered is a resonant call for all of us, a reminder that we are engaged in a spiritual war against forces that thrive on division and fear. Jesus revealed to me not just the hidden agendas of this world, but also the sacred power that rests within each of us to break free from the chains that bind our hearts and minds. It's time to rise, to seek out the light, and embrace the call for a collective awakening. So I invite you, dear viewer, to pause for a moment and reflect. What truths lie hidden within you? Have you felt the stirrings of something deeper in your soul, urging you to question, to seek? Your experiences matter. I encourage you to share your stories in the comments below. Let's cultivate a community grounded in truth and awakening, for every voice contributes to this beautiful chorus of enlightenment. And if this message resonates with you, if it ignites a fire within, I urge you to subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Hit that notification bell, for our journey is just beginning. We are diving deeper into the revelations that connect us, and the truths that set us free. You won't want to miss what's next. A powerful testimony awaiting you that could further illuminate your path. Thank you for traveling this road with me. I'm Ahmad, and as we part, remember, the search for truth is a sacred journey, and together we can navigate the shadows to find the light. Until next time, stay brave, stay curious, and always seek the truth that lies beyond.